Hello and welcome to the Merle and Locke podcast. I'm Merle.
And I am Locke.
Set sail and low expectations for everything nerd, accompanied by a healthy, albeit shameful, helping to pointless banter, lack of focus, and questionably acquired knowledge.
And dare we say more?
And more. Now, for today's topic, Locke, what I want to talk about or get into is making builds. If you don't know what I mean by that, so whenever you are playing an MMO, you pick a class and you pick a race and you make this character and you have like this whole plethora of different abilities that you can utilize, right? And that you can have on your hotbar to be able to use during, conflicts and like whenever you're fighting. And a lot of these abilities, like they have, certain passive abilities that activate, or they tie in really well with some other abilities. So if you line up everything on your hotbar, spec into all these different abilities, everything ties together really well, then you can do like the max amount of like damage output or develop a really good defense against certain beasties you might face up against, whether it be like resistance to like high direct damage or area of effect damage and things like that. I think it's really fun trying to develop all these different builds, really creating all these different characters and trying to figure it out. I know we went into this before when we were playing World of Warcraft. I had a dwarf hunter, right? That I would always use because it took me forever to make this build that was, that was somewhat okay, right?
Right.
And it took me so long to try and figure it out and try to wrap my head around all the different abilities and different things to spec into before I settled on something that was it was effective enough to get me by. And after I reached that point, I stopped. I was like, okay, I found something that works. I'm sticking with this. I don't want to go into another character, because like I just finally landed on this and I don't have to worry about it anymore. And then eventually over time you would wear at me. You were picking at me like again and again and again, trying to get me to, venture out.
I would never pick.
Broaden my horizons, as it were, and try out like different classes and different races and things. And I finally did. And I started, having to make these new builds again and again, seeing how everything tied together. And especially in Elder Scrolls Online, when you have to focus on, you often come across like these big conflicts in ESO where, especially if you have to fight like world bosses and what have you. And if you can create something with a lot of really good survivability, you can solo these world bosses, which is, pretty rare. And it's pretty difficult to achieve that. But if you have like all this damage over time is mostly what I focus on when I'm trying to achieve that. I do a lot of damage over time effects that are really effective against world bosses in the Elder Scrolls. But my brother, whenever we play with him, he always tries to duel me, right? And do a little PvP action.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And every time I go against him, like sometimes I can hold my own, but he always focuses on the burst damage abilities. Where burst damage abilities, they're very effective in PvP. But I rarely ever do like all the PvP stuff, because I enjoy like the world and the stories, and the only way I can, get through that and being able to solo that content is by focusing more on damage over time effects and working on a high defense. And doesn't do very well in the PvP. So creating these builds and whatnot and focusing on different things is very challenging for me myself. I know some people like it comes more naturally and they're very good at it, but it made me think about it, right? Like I started thinking about it more and more and why some people are just so good at it and they don't have as many problems or run into as many problems as I do. I was thinking like, man, I've been playing more MMOs than my brother for the longest time. So why does he always gain this upper hand on me when it comes to making these builds? And it made me consider those card games. So if we're talking about like Magic the Gathering, So games like that, where you have to build these decks with these, all these monsters and these spell cards and what have you that like the booster monsters or create these certain effects that help you gain the upper hand during a card game. And I was never good at that. I could never accomplish that. Like my deck building abilities was just awful. And I always got my ass handed to me every game I ever played, to the point that I was like, I don't really want to play these games anymore because I'm not very good at it. And I'm not passionate enough about it to pursue this skill. I just wasn't that into the card games. But my brother really was. And he made these awesome decks, and he was able to destroy people left and right and do really well. That's what made me, like, when I thought about that, I was like, that has to be it. And you yourself, I know sometimes when we're going through like new content in World of Warcraft, right? Where we're just traveling through, and I'm like in the process of making a build, and we're just starting out, like we're just like trying to, well, it's the period in which we should start wrapping our heads around like these builds we want to pursue. And we start going against these bigger and bigger enemies, and you're just like offing everything left and right. And I'm still working on like one little tiny, kobold or something, trying to kill them. And it's taken me forever, and you cleared out the rest of the room. And I'm like, how the hell have you gotten here so quickly to this point where you can just destroy everything? I know you were a big fan of, the card games and what have you. I've convinced myself, or it brings me comfort to think that it's not because I'm crap at, making builds. It's
no, you're terrible.
You just have all this experience like playing card games and whatnot, and looking for these certain abilities that, or have an eye for making these certain abilities tie together. So let's hear your process as far as making builds and what you go through or what you look for.
If we're talking like MMOs, stuff like that, I worry about my haste for a lot of different characters because I want my abilities to be readily available. I want to be able to reuse them again and again and again. And I worry about my crit, how much damage I'm putting out overall. I think those are the two major ones that I worry about on both characters that are either spellcasters or even are my regular like DPS characters, whether that be like your rogue or my demon hunter for World of Warcraft. That's the general area that I tend to kind of go around. I'm sure it's not max damage that I could be putting out,
but it's effective enough that you can get by rather easily without overthinking it like I do.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and even when I overthink it, like I always plan ahead too. That's the problem. I think that's my biggest problem, is that I plan ahead to a max level character that has access to numerous abilities. Like I'll go through and look at the entire skill tree, and I'll plan out what notes I want to hit, what abilities I want to spec into, and I'll choose abilities based on that. Like I know you have the ability to kind of switch around things as you need them. I realize that, but I don't like to think about that. I just like to work towards that very particular build that I want because I feel like I have it figured out and planned ahead. But until I get to max level, it makes me very ineffective.
Right.
And it's frustrating.
Even if I have a particular build in mind, like a certain area, because your trees won't let you go certain areas, like you said, you want to hit certain nodes so that you can get to the one that you really want. And while I'm branching out, I'll try to hit the really big ones that I really want along the way. Because once you reach a point, they're like, well, you need to acquire, say, like, I don't know, eight more points in that skill tree in order to move on to the next tier of abilities. And I'll go, okay, so which ones do I really want that are in my, let's just call it a preset. It's what I want to achieve. So I'll be like, okay, this one is achievable right now. I'll go for that. Might increase my overall damage for whatever ability that I use most often. And then I'll unlock a couple of unnecessary ones that aren't needed at that moment until I keep unlocking more. I worry about whatever things are being boosted by the armor that I'm wearing.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing as well. Like as far as making a build in an MMO, what your armor sets do, for example. Like that's what I love about ESO and like these particular armor sets that build towards certain perks. I think it's usually 5 pieces of armor or weapons in a certain category that they all stack together to give you these certain passive, perks, right? Whereas like some abilities, like if you have 5 of that armor set, it'll give you a big boost to your critical hit chance or something, or critical damage or whatever it be. Or maybe it increases the amount of stamina pool or mana pool that you have, or health pool, or if it's just simply defense, like it just boosts up your defense if you have that many armor sets. And then you have certain skill lines that you can spec into for like the type of weapon you have or the type of armor that you prioritize, whether it be light, medium, or heavy armor. And then you have these passive skills that say, like, if you have so many of this type of armor, like whether it be light armor, medium armor, or heavy armor, like you'll get this passive perk to add into your skills. And that's really challenging. And I love that. It's a lot of fun. And I love like the array of different ways different MMOs do things. As far as min-maxing goes, like being able to figure that out, it's very satisfying. I'm starting to love it more and more as I delve into it. As far as like new players go, there are tons of resources out there for people that can't quite wrap their head around it, or they don't want to spend the time needed to figure things out, or if they don't want to do any kind of trial and error, they just want something that works and they want to implement it and they want to get on with the show. And there's lots of resources out there on YouTube, or there's different sites dedicated to particular MMOs that will tell you, if you want this build, here's like everything that you'll need for it, like everything you need to spec into, everything you need to work towards, all the armor that you need to get, where you get that armor, what kind of armor traits you need. Like it'll tell you absolutely everything. But it's not that satisfying. Like I get the appeal. Like if you don't particularly like doing that type of thing, or putting those, like stringing that all together and going crazy, sitting there in front of a screen for hours trying to figure out, like, how the hell do I make this guy? How do I get good?
I just want to get good. But, like, I get it. Like, I was the same way. I didn't want to sit there or try to figure out what stats do I need to worry about most. I was just like, I just want to play the game and enjoy it. But like now, I'll take, sometimes when I don't necessarily know what I want to do, I'll look at these different builds, and then if I'm not quite happy with the way the build is, I'll try to turn it into my own thing and just respec some other things into a different area.
That creates a lot of possibilities as well. Yeah, trying to tailor, like taking a decent build and tailoring it to your own style of playing. Yeah, absolutely. If we were to consider World of Warcraft, whenever you get an expansion, you always get these little coins, right? Little character boost coin, where you could make a character and you could boost them up to max level, or almost max level, just so you have like 10 levels to gain over that new expansion. And if you were to do that, I could definitely see you just looking up a build, because you'll have access to everything right away. Where if you create a character from scratch, you'll slowly start to see, like, get like trickle fed all these new abilities and what have you, and you can see how the puzzle pieces fit together over time. Now, if you do a character boost, you have everything all at once, and it's kind of overwhelming, So I could see why people would just like look up a build and be like, okay, I'll just implement this build and then I'll tailor it later on, however I need. Yeah, I think that's a solid strat right there. I myself, I have lots of coins from over the years
I've used them
that
all.
I could use. Have you?
I have.
Oh man, I still have 4 or 5 coins that I haven't used because I like the trickle. I like doing the trickle and just trying to figure it out. But I'm sure I'm gonna get to the point where making builds is kind of a hassle, and I'm like, I'll just boost a character, look up a good build, and then I'll roll from there. But by this point, I've created so many characters that like I've kind of explored most of the classes.
Yeah.
But things are constantly being adjusted, like things are being nerfed or things are, getting higher damage outputs and whatnot, abilities are changing. So I realize like over time as things change, I might, not want to I probably won't realize it and try to make a build that I know works really well, and then it won't work well because everything has been nerfed. And I'll have to like either re-explore everything or just look up online and be like, okay, this class that I thought I knew, I don't know anymore. I need help here.
Which will happen almost every expansion.
Right.
So we also got stuff like ESO where they already give you that option. World of Warcraft doesn't do it at the moment, but ESO does that little like pre-build where they suggest what ones
Oh yeah, they
to
do that. Yeah.
where they're like, okay, do you want to specialize in DPS, tanking, or healing, depending on what's available for that class.
Yeah, that is pretty helpful.
And you can pick that, so every time that you get the points to spend towards your new abilities, they say, hey, how about you upgrade this one ability, or how about you get this other passive, or whatever.
Right. Now, well, World of Warcraft, I think they do have that.
If they do, I have not noticed it.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure the last time I created a new character, there was like a little help tool or something, some kind of option that's saying like, do you want like suggestions or something? And I immediately like clicked off of it. But I vaguely remember.
I don't need your suggestion.
So I don't know exactly how much it helps, but I'm pretty sure they have something for new players, like if they need, a little bit of a kickstart, to figure things out.
I'm sure maybe they do, but kind of like you said, I don't need your suggestion. Get out of here with that. What do you think I am? Do you know who I am?
I've been around the block a time or two.
I don't even read the pamphlet of instructions when I get a new thing. I'm a man.
I'm a man. Golly. Yeah, I guess it's a sense of pride, right?
That's right.
That keeps you from taking the easy route, and then you just struggle.
Yeah.
Some of us enjoy the struggle. I think.
Yeah. So some of us like to get extremely agitated with something and then turn around and say, "Okay, fine. I guess I need the help."
Yeah. Some of us like to perform poorly with our new build, and then go into our raid and whatnot, and then blame the healer. Well, we'll blame the healer or the tank when we get insta-gibbed.
Yeah.
Because we're dum-dums.
Big dum-dums.
Thank you for joining us on the Merle and Locke podcast. If you enjoyed this banter, please consider becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/Merle and Locke, or simply follow the link in the description. Thank you.